Good afternoon. I'm Chris Barrena-Sarobe, Chester County District Attorney. It's my unfortunate duty today to come before you and to again discuss the death of 12-year-old Malinda Hoagland. This morning, we upgraded the charges against Rendell Hoagland and Cindy Warren. We charged them with first-degree murder, second-degree murder, third-degree murder, kidnapping, and hundreds of related charges. The defendants are currently being held in Chester County Prison. Because of the nature of the charges, bail is not available to them. And although more conversations to have with Malinda's family, and although we have more work to do on the investigation front, I can stand here before you today and say that we intend to pursue the death penalty in this case. Before I go further, I want to set some ground rules for today's press conference. First, I remind the public that, like all defendants who are charged with crimes, these defendants are innocent until proven guilty. Second, I want to inform everyone what we said in our press announcement this morning. Malinda Hoagland's biological mother is mourning. She does not wish to be contacted. We'll talk a little bit more about her later, but she has a severe medical condition already. And so I'm asking all of you not to contact her, sisters, or her caretakers. Third, I want to remind you that I have certain ethical responsibilities as I stand here before you today. And so one of those things is I can't really talk substantially about any defendant's prior criminal history, if they have any. I can't talk about statements that any defendants gave to police, if they gave statements. So please don't ask about them. There may be information in the affidavit already. You're free to use that information as part of your stories and part of your reporting. And so with that, I'm going to warn everyone that what I'm going to get through and what I'm going to describe is truly unimaginable. It's difficult to hear. It's trying to process. And so now I'm going to set forth and try to discuss the indescribable. As I get into that explanation, I have to also first actually step back and say, I'm joined by a very small part here of an incredible team. So to my left is First Assistant Erin O'Brien. She's the lead prosecutor in this case. She's spent decades working child abuse cases and has an incredible amount of experience in this field. We would not have gotten nearly as far without her leadership and her teamwork as she worked with the Chester County detectives. Next to her is Chief Kurt Martinez from the West County Police Department. His officers, as well as some surrounding officers in his township, responded to the 911 call and immediately did everything in their power to get Malinda the medical care that she needed. They were just called too late. But I'm very grateful for Chief Martinez and his partnership. And to Chief Martinez's left is Ben Martin, Chester County detective, who's the affiant in this case. So the affidavits that you have been put forth by him. To my right is the management team at the Chester County Detectives who helped oversee all the detectives who worked on this investigation. And when I tell you practically every detective in my agency worked on this, it's not an exaggeration. We have computer forensics detectives and civilians who comb through image after image with the help of the child abuse unit detectives. Ben did not work on this case by himself. And so to my right is Chief David Sassa, Lieutenant Mo Nadachowski, and Sergeant Joseph Walton. Joe, in particular, oversees our child abuse unit and our forensics unit. So with those introductions, I want to talk about this case because the last time we gathered, I detailed how law enforcement found a severely emaciated and broken body of 12-year-old Malinda Hoagland. She was taken to Paoli Hospital and pronounced dead on May 4th. When she got there, she weighed 50 pounds. She had apparent fractures and bruises all throughout her body. And her injuries were simply inexplainable. And then as we investigated, a preliminary number of cell phone videos clearly showed that Malinda was terrorized by the defendants. And since our last press conference, we've had a forensic pathologist make a number of findings during Malinda's autopsy. Malinda died of starvation and blunt force trauma. She did not have any disease. She did not have something that caused her to lose weight. She was starved, and she was forced to exercise to the point that she had, according to the pathologist, no sign of body fat on her. In fact, Malinda had injury to practically every major organ system in her body, including her brain. While medical experts chronicled her injuries, the team of fabulous detectives here went through and parsed through incredible amounts of data. This was data from cell phones, blink camera videos, and other sources. They found over 450 videos of evidentiary value, hundreds of still images of evidentiary value, and text messages of evidentiary value that spanned 2.5 years. The evidence shows that these defendants communicated regularly about how they were going to terrorize Malinda. She was subjected to physical and psychological torture. And as someone who has reviewed just a small fraction of these photos and videos and text messages, I will tell you that it appears that Malinda was reprogrammed to accept abuse as part of her life. She would not report abuse because she was afraid of being beaten even more fiercely than she had been before. The physical punishments spanned a really wide and torturous gamut. On multiple occasions, Malinda was struck in the face so badly that she had to be held home from school because makeup would not cover up her injuries, and makeup was regularly employed in order to cover up lesser injuries. And when Malinda was 11 years old, she suffered from rug burn to her face so severe that could not be covered up by makeup that she had to be held home from school for weeks. On top of that, she was subjected to other types of strange torture. She was chained to furniture. She was forced to run in place. She had been forced to do push-ups for hours on end. She was forced to hold her hands above her head, and on some occasions hold books above her head. The level of exercise that they placed on Malinda must have caused her prolonged pain. And in fact, we believe that in some instances they caused stress fractures to her body. In one video in particular, Cindy Warren was recording and sharing with Rendell Hoagland Malinda crying, holding her hands above her head, holding a stack of books, asking to be forgiven for dropping the books, and then she was beaten with a metal spatula and told that Rendell Hoagland was going to come back and beat her worse. And the psychological torture in this case was real. The inadvertent and side torture was palatable because they didn't just chain her and watch her over responsibly. She was shackled to the basement floor, furniture in the basement floor, and forced to sleep there. And when she woke up in the middle of the night needing to use the bathroom and no one could unshackle her, she was forced to urinate on herself. And when the defendants found that out, they blamed her for it and they beat her even more. The psychological abuse was real. They belittled her almost daily, it seems. They told a child that they were going to kill her. They forced her to do endless amounts of chores. They forced her to do endless amounts of exercise. all while berating her and calling her an idiot, saying that she was worthless, when in fact this little resilient girl, while enduring all of this, was excelling at school. Just months before her death, she was placed in honors classes by her cyber school. But in May, this incredibly resilient young girl, her body could not take it anymore. She began to shut down early morning hours of May 4th. And the defendants denied her medical care. They questioned whether she was faking being unconscious. They tried to find smelling salts when she wouldn't wake up to try and wake her up. They took almost 3/4 of a day to call 911. And by the time that West County and other law enforcement officers could respond, it was simply too late. So, since we announced our initial set of charges, we've all asked this question from the outset, right? Like, how could this happen in America? I'm not sure that I have satisfying answers today. But what I want to do before I turn it over to you for questions is kind of talk through some of the immediate questions that we've seen that as a team we've been approached by and asked by members of the public, or we've seen in comments online. And I want to start by the first question, which is just quite simply like, when did this all start? How could someone turn and lose so much weight so quickly? And so to my left and in the packets is a timeline of abuse. We were able to determine through text messages that the first instance that we can say right now is that in November of 2021, that was the first instance in which we have some sort of recording that the defendants caused a physical injury to Malinda. Coincidentally, that was also the same month that she was last seen by a pediatrician. At that visit in November of 2021, she weighed 77 pounds. And we could not fit enough bullets to make this legible, but we've chosen some of the lowlights from the defendant's abuse so that you can see in one page what is detailed across are dozens of pages of information in the affidavit of probable cause. Malinda experienced torture that was progressively ratcheted up over time. She was removed from school in December of 2023. She was still excelling at cyber school in March of 2024. And in May, and on May 4th, we have a detailed timeline of what these defendants knew and how they failed to provide her medical care, as demonstrated by their own text messages and their own phones and phone searches. I want to turn to the next question, which is that we've seen, which is, where was Malinda's body happening? Right? And this is sort of my frustration as where we are with society, because a lot of people like to post things and comment online and speculate and make accusations. But in reality, Malinda's mom suffers from a severe medical condition. She can not really care for herself, and she's in no position to care for a child. That is one of the primary reasons, I assume, that Rendell Hoagland had primary custody of Malinda. She has no blame in all of this, and she was in no position to do what her father should have done. Another question that we've seen and we want to talk about, because we've been, and I hinted at earlier, is will we charge the death penalty in this case? We are pursuing the death penalty here. I'll talk a little bit about what that process looks like. Every first-degree murder charge when it is supported by certain factors, is eligible for the death penalty. One of those factors that we are to consider is torture, regardless of the age of the victim, whether they were tortured before or as part of their killing. And that is the primary factor, although we are researching others that involve in this case. The next step legally is for us to file paperwork at the time of arraignment. So that's the next legal proceeding that occurs after a preliminary hearing. And we intend to file that paperwork. But I want to tell everyone, like in every DA's office across this Commonwealth, that determination is not set in stone. Because we have been working on this aspect of the case, the investigation phase, I have not gotten a chance to personally sit down with Malinda's family. They will be consulted as part of the final determination of how we proceed. And we will be looking at other factors that we're required to pursuant to the death penalty statute. In the end, before trial, we will make our final determination as to how we are going to proceed with the death penalty. But I can tell everyone right now, we will be filing that notice at the time of arraignment. Another question that I think we all are asking is, what in the world could we have done to prevent this? It's really difficult for me to be able to say in this case, because on one hand, when you read what we've chronicled in the affidavit of probable cause, you have to feel like we do, that there has to be something that we could have done, that we could have done better for Malinda. But I want to say that part of the reason I'm here and why this is such a critical press conference to me is we're dealing with the unimaginable. And I think it's important for school districts, law enforcement, CYFs across the state and across the country to see what happened here. Because although it doesn't get a ton of press, this does happen on exceedingly rare occasions in different parts of the country. And it's time that we all go back and look at our processes and make sure that we are doing everything we can to help our children, to make sure that they're not being subjected to this. But on the other hand, I want to make something perfectly clear. We are here because there is evil in this world. We all like to, I think, at times forget about that simple fact. And sometimes, no matter what everyone does, no matter how much we try, evil harms innocent people, even innocent children. And so we are here today because of what these defendants did, and for no other real reason. Because we've reviewed scores of school records, we've restored all kinds of records here in this case, and the evidence shows here that teachers, school districts, whether they were cyber school or in school, like in-person school, they cared about Malinda. They checked in with her. She was reprogrammed. And they did the best that they could with the evidence that they had. There is no investigation into any agency for failing to act in this case. This is not a case where abuse was actually reported and no one did anything. And so the final question I'll ask before I turn it over to everyone here is, and I'm sure everyone is asking this as well, is what can we do to make sure that this doesn't happen again? Because this should never happen. And the first thing I will ask everyone to be reminded of, and it's not a criticism, but it needs to be a part of our culture, is that if you say something, you need to say something. You do not need to be a teacher, a doctor, a school, a member of law enforcement. You don't have to be a mandatory reporter to call Childline and report something strange. The law does not allow any government agency to take children out of their parents' home without real, meaningful evidence and without reports. We, as government agencies across the board have very limited abilities to be able to go in court and do what we need to do. So your reports, even if you don't feel like something happened in the aftermath, can be a data point that adds to an ongoing story. It can be that first dot in a timeline. And it can help a child. So please, make calls to Childline, make the reports that you need to make if you see something so that we can do our jobs. Because unfortunately in this case, none of the Childline reports that came in reached the county detectives or any law enforcement officer level that the law kind of describes. They should not have appeared to have made it to us. And the second thing I will say as part of that same question is that we need to strengthen our laws. And so in the aftermath of the first press conference, I've spoken to almost every elected legislative member of the Pennsylvania House or Senate in this county. We've talked about what things that we could possibly do to strengthen our laws. And one of the things I'm proud to say today is that I've started the process of working with State Representative Melissa Schusterman to propose a new child torture law that would strengthen our ability to protect children and heighten penalties for people that torture children. Pennsylvania is a state that does not have child torture laws where other states do. In fact, Delaware, Michigan, and Connecticut all have objectively, I believe, very good laws that we can model legislation off of. And so I'm proud to say I'm working with Representative Schusterman, and I hope to be working with every member of the House Judiciary Committee to put forth a child torture law soon. So with that, I want to close this part of the conference by saying that this has been an unfortunate privilege for me to work with this entire team that's on stage, some of who are in the back, and some who are upstairs working on other cases. We worked diligently to get justice for Malinda, and the charges today are the first step in that process. Thank you. What questions you folks have?
Two questions for you,
Sure.
sir, if you could. First off, I didn't get a chance to read the full criminal complaint. Do we know why? Do we know why this was taking place, number one? Number two, the school district has put out statements suggesting that they followed their duties under the law and made reports to the county agency that is responsible for checking in on matters like this. Has your investigation shown then what happened there?
A number of things are, part of that is detailed here in the affidavit of probable cause. To start with the second question first, which is, yes, the school district did make, as part of the, we talked about this as part of the first press conference too, but as a reminder, 2 Childline reports. Those Childline reports went to Chester County CYF. CYF made phone calls to Cindy Warren and Malinda Hoagland, I'm sorry, don't quote me on which one, where they lied to them about the nature of why Malinda had been injured or what her behavior looked like.
Should they have gone to that house?
Look, I'm not a CYF worker, I'm a prosecutor, right? So I try to stay in my lane as much as possible. So what I will say is, like, iron sharpens iron, and I encourage you to ask those questions to CYF. I believe that your questions to our agency, to CYF, to the schools, make sure that we have better processes and procedures in place. And so you should ask those questions. Do I personally wish that they had tried to talk to Malinda Hoagland or gone to the house? Yes, but I will caution you, that house was incredibly clean, right? I don't believe that COIF would have had the power to do anything because the house did not give the appearances that she was being abused. And I wish they would have talked to Malinda Hoagland, because there's a very, very small chance that she might have disclosed. But as I've told you, she's been reprogrammed, and she was not inclined to tell anyone what was happening to her. She was on video with teachers every day, but she was being watched. And she was at school for months with teachers that clearly cared about her. They would clearly check in with her, and she did not disclose anything directly. Everything that teachers were working off of and CYF workers were working off had been observed. So that's how I try to answer that question as fairly.
guess why this happened?
I never can answer why someone would ever torture a 12-year-old, right? There's no, whatever the explanation is, I don't know that I would believe it.
And previous reports have said there was another child living in that home, so there still has been no indication of abuse on that second child.
Correct. Our investigation has revealed that Cindy Warren's biological son, a younger son, was living in that house. And actually, some of the evidence reviewed showed that when she would get up to go do something else in another room and was trying to record Malinda, that she would have her son do the recording for her. There's no indication that he was abused. By all accounts, he was treated well in that house.
And how old is he?
I don't know. I'm not in a position to want to describe his age at this point because he is a juvenile, but I will say that he is younger than Malinda.
And just one more question. You had mentioned Malinda's biological mother having a severe medical condition. Is that a physical or mental?
That's all I'm going to say about her for her privacy, but she has a severe medical condition. Doesn't allow her to care for children.
And two questions for you. You had mentioned Cindy's son. Where is he now? Is he now placed with children and youth?
That's not something that I mean, he's not in their care, so that's something that I don't think is fair to a juvenile who doesn't have his own voice.
And just talks about a child torture law, and kind of the sum of what you're saying is it was really hard for you guys to even find out she was being tortured. How do child torture laws, how can they work if we don't even know what's happening?
With the child torture law here, where if we had found Malinda at an earlier stage, we wouldn't be in a position to be charging crimes like murder, right? Because we would have saved her. But we would be left with like kidnapping charges and other charges that maybe don't fully encompass the severe physical and psychological torture that she endured. And those level of protections, while I don't know that people who are inclined to do this view laws as a deterrent for them, it will give us a greater ability to prosecute and punish and fully encompass all the criminality as to when people choose to do this.
Would that then maybe allow things like child lines to get up to you guys at a faster pace?
We have child lines come up to us, right? That has nothing to do with that. We got a child line report yesterday and responded immediately because that's what warranted it. We got it in a matter of minutes. It's not a timing thing. It is the nature of the report, right? I have small children. They get injured playing sports and doing things, and I send them to school, right? And we're looking for other factors besides the fact of an injury. We need, for those child line reports to reach our level, there needs to be some sort of reported abuse or very severe physical abuse that is reported to us that looks criminal in nature, generally speaking.
I didn't cover this from the beginning. After they were arrested the first time, were they held in custody?
Yes.
They've been in custody ever since?
They've been in custody since we arrested them on May 7th.
What was the investigative catalyst that led to you and your office upgrading to these first-degree murder charges? Obviously, the investigation had laid bare these 2 years of alleged abuse.
It was honestly really, we're always, I believe, working towards this. But when we saw the abuse very clearly on a early review of some of the cell phone videos we obtained from cell phones from the interior blink camera system, we felt like we had probable cause and enough to make an initial set of charges because we did not want them having any freedom whatsoever if we could have brought charges for what they had done. And so we brought the charges that we had as soon as possible. We waited for all the medical evidence to come through.
Given the vast amount of recordings, text messages, and things that your team's been able to uncover, how strong does that make your case?
I mean, I wouldn't be telling you that we were pursuing the death penalty if we did not strongly believe in our case. And we're not in the habit of bringing cases that we don't strongly believe in. But from my perspective, we're going to be doing a lot of pushing the play button at trial.
And given that you are pursuing the death penalty, I know you also mentioned you working with Malinda's family and acknowledging that they would like throughout this process. What does that look like?
I think there's just a number of conversations that we're going to have to get their viewpoint. This is going to be a difficult case for any family to hear. And while we often like to be in lockstep with our victims, there will be times where we might have different viewpoints, but they have rights under Pennsylvania law. They're going to be consulted at every step of the process going forward, and we're going to make sure that if there is some sort of disagreement, which sometimes in these really, in death penalty related cases there is, that they have their day in court, right, to be able to come into court and say their viewpoint to a judge, because we can't really proceed in many instances without giving them an ability to talk to the judge. So we're going to follow the law. We really respect the victims here in Chester County, and we want to, in any investigation, until we get to this charging point, like we kind of sometimes have to have minimal contact with them. And so now's the point where we're really going to sit down with them and consult with them and start to try to forge a path forward, for better or for worse. This is going to be a long road. All right, well, if there are no other questions, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.